double speed.
It is going to be weird. All right, so I'm Hank.
And I'm Alicia.
And this is, what do I call this? I call this Army of Me 2.
Yeah.
Because the first one's called Army of Me.
Yeah.
And then when we do a second one where it's two of us, it's Army of Me 2.
That's smart. I like that.
I was pretty happy when I came up with it.
It's an interesting addition.
So...
I know, I'm sorry.
I was going to let it hang there for a bit. I was going to let that dead air celebrate you.
Ooh, don't.
So, we are sitting here because we're talking about Legion, the hit FX show, which is now in its second season. We're looking at episode number 1, and we're going to try something kind of different here. This isn't just going to be a discussion of the show. We put the show on in the background, and it's playing at double speed. So this is almost like a double speed commentary track that we're doing, or you would have to
and it's
slow
a play
it
on the
down.
Name too, right?
Intentionally so.
Double speed.
That's
smart.
So, we just talked over the intro. A bunch of stuff's going on. We don't really have time to unpack of like, wasn't the last season great?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
I know there's a bunch of blank stuff, so we have some time.
Yeah, last season was fucking fantastic. It was beautiful and confusing and beautiful and scary, and I liked it.
It is, as somebody... What's your experience with the X-Men?
Very little. Like, I watched X-Men movies, and I've seen some of the comic books, not many, not a lot. But I did, look this up when I got into it last year. So I know a little bit of the history of Legion. Yeah, just a bit.
And I've been big into X-Men, since 1990, easily.
Jeez.
I was reading my dad's old copies of them way back in the day. And, now the stuff that I really love is, Grant Morrison did a run on them. Grant Morrison did a run on the new X-Men similar to his run on there was a DC character, or DC series called Doom Patrol.
Okay.
And, many people consider X-Men to be, Doom Patrol came first, and there's a lot of people who look at X-Men and be oh, Marvel was doing Doom Patrol. So then different artists and writers who have worked on both series, Grant Morrison's the main one. And I just see a lot of both. One of the main characters when Grant Morrison was running Doom Patrol was a character called Crazy Jane, who has multiple personality disorder, and all of her personalities have different superpowers. And the crux of the series is her learning how to get those personalities to all work together. It winds up not being about, the traditional thing is, now we get one personality, and this is more of a, no, we're going to figure out how to make all 100 of us get along together. So I always see a whole bunch of that in Legion.
Yeah, absolutely. It not knowing too much about the history of Legion, just the way that we're seeing the personalities pop up, they didn't show all of the parts of what am I trying to say? King, right? We didn't see all of the different parts, and I think you had mentioned you weren't even certain if Lenny is King, or if this is just another personality that was subsumed in the course of his life, and maybe we'll know that. Do you know what I mean? As this goes on,
that is the question. Something in the comic book, they do a much more shitty traditional narrative trope of Legion has multiple personalities and they all manifest as again with a different superpower. Whereas what I liked about Legion season 1 is that it's a show about schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. That that type of multiple personality disorder doesn't exist outside of fiction. People don't fucking have that. They might hear voices and they might have personality things, but that schizophrenia doesn't look like that.
No.
And that this show was trying to say, what would it look like? What if you were an incredibly powerful psychic mutant and a schizophrenic?
And that this is the way the world had learned to deal with you also, and that you'd come to accept that. And he still goes through that about schizophrenia. I think he talked to her about that in the end, about disbelief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I feel like we're now seeing the evolution of him into the comic book character. Now the smart British him is a voice inside his head.
Yeah, I like that.
So I almost wonder, when you come into the comic, he's got all these different personalities. I almost feel like by the time the show ends, he's going to be that person.
Which person?
The person from the comic book.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That it's going to start out that he's just one person with schizophrenia.
Yeah.
and then his brain is going to sort them into different beings.
I like that. I think that that's probably the best way they could have presented it, because in order to string me along to believe that we're coming into this late in his life and he's still figuring these parts out, I don't know how old is he supposed to be, probably like 30 or something like that. But a person suffering from schizophrenia and having these abilities isn't going to understand them easily. And as an entertainment, it doesn't make sense to just immediately go into it. No, this is the established person. He's got this figured out. That doesn't draw me in as much as having a real understanding of how complicated their life would have been to get to this point. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've gone quite a bit into the episode now. I wanted to talk about this when I was watching it.
The ships of waffles.
What is that? Why? And it's in multiple scenes. And this room where they eat, and then they're literally separated by a river. I just imagine them coming to eat together, to sit down at a table, and it's like, I'll meet you. I got to go to the other side of the room to get to this side so that we can sit across from each other. It seems nonsensical, but it's got to have a purpose, right?
Well, you get into that thing of like, or is this show just doing weird shit for the sake of weird shit?
Which I like.
Well, my take on it right now, and maybe I'm giving them too much slack for this, but like, you hear that stuff in the background. This is the Division 3 headquarters, and what is it? Beware of repetitive thoughts. Beware of any thoughts that seem like not your own.
I like that,
Be aware of, I think there's one that said something like, be aware, if you feel any shift in reality, please let someone know. That kind of a message. Yeah. So, this might be one of those things where they're creating an alienating, surreal environment, like the people, not the TV show, but the actual Division 3, their headquarters has to be fucked up and weird, because that helps for some reason. Like it helps people to feel alienated, or it helps things we need to.
If everything's weird, then you don't feel so weird?
No, I'm almost going to more of a place of like this would be a far version of this would be like, if we work in this building, we get psychic attacks a lot, so we have to hang up pictures of grotesque physical dismemberments. So if anyone tries to just randomly read somebody's mind in our head, they're going to see that stuff and freak out. Okay. That this is a variation on that kind of like
Wonka's factory needing to be a little bit more chaotic because that's the expectation.
Not an expectation, but in this case, for security. That when you're dealing with beings who can affect your mind and can affect the very reality, part of the response to that, I think the other level is that it was built by a crazy person. Well, but again, that's a bit of an easy out.
And so there's a couple of things about that. First of all, if you put waffles between me and an enemy, you're absolutely right. I'm going to stop because I want those waffles. And then secondly, I think that there's an interesting comparison to, what was the name of the place they were at before? Summerland. So Summerland was built by Oliver, right? And Oliver was considered eccentric, and that's why you kind of see a lab with nature imagery, and there's a lot of like incorporation of nature. And I kind of got this like 1960s free love vibe of architecture that you would see. And then I feel like there's a similar theme when they go to Division 3, where it's like, designed by a crazy person. So it's a whole other level of like, no, the architecture has purpose, but it only makes sense to this person. They probably loved waffles as much as me.
I mean, everybody, I know some people who don't love waffles. I was going to say everybody does. I mean, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to name names. So much weird stuff happens in this show. You don't like these guys. I don't like these guys either.
Oh, the chattering teeth. Oh gosh, that hits a thing for me.
I made it sound like it was your thing, but it's a thing for me as well. And I think it's probably a thing for a lot of people. Yeah. But I think I mentioned to you that there was a while where I was vaguely, I think maybe I was taking too much acid, and I started being afraid that I was being haunted by the concept of chattering teeth.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, it was one of those like there was a thing where this repeat theme happened over several months, and at one point when I was really high, my brain started going of like, oh, am I seeing the cracks in the Matrix right now? Like, is this thing trying to reach out? Like, is this what it would be like to have a multidimensional being trying to fuck with me? Is like, you would see its hand on a poster and hear its name in a song and see its eyes reflected in a fucking window. And all of those are the same thing happening at once.
Oh, creepy.
Anyway.
Yeah, so it hits a button.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's just because I grind my teeth. And there's I get a physical sensation in my mouth when I hear that sound, and
For
it's
sure.
just like, nope, this is unnerving. And also because it makes so much sense that if you have a psychological infection, that's the kind of thing that you would see, like muscles twitching and things like that. They're things that you there are evidence of these things existing from mental trauma even.
It's a really good manifestation. One of the things I love the most about Legion is it does the best visual and narrative representations of how truly surreal psychic powers would be. Mm-hmm. That it wouldn't just be like fucking... what's the laziest way you do psychic powers? You fucking mic in somebody's voice so that you can hear, like that's so fucking, that's what they did for Professor X. It's so easy. Whereas this is like, no, fucking time and space and everything would move and something really weird happens right up here.
Yeah.
Melanie, the leader of Summerland, is apparently going into a weird sex and drugs
super high.
place.
So this little creature, I think that's the elephant. I think it's meant to represent this. She does the vapor through the little elephant thing, the porcelain elephant, and then she gets super fucking high, and now instead of it being an elephant, it's this creepy walkie guy with like a gas mask on that looks like a snout to me, and it's moving like an elephant. So I just wonder if that's like the little bit of a twist that they give it.
I don't... I think that's a thing, and we're going to find out what it is
at
some point.
I like it.
I certainly hope so. We get the am I a man who dreams he's a butterfly or butterfly who dreams he's a man myth, which I guess it's good to retell people every once in a while.
And like, I just gotta say, the second egg's little chick is way cuter. It may be a little slimy, but like...
Slimy things need love too.
They do, and also, doesn't it look more pathetic? That chick looks like it's doing all right. It's met the evolutional scale. It knows how to do what it's going to do. This thing is manifested out of an idea and is barely surviving. So I have more empathy for this squishy little black thing.
I mean, I hear ya.
Oh, look at how cute it is.
I hear ya. I mean, in some regards, it's a bit like we're lucky cancer isn't cute.
Oh, that's true.
If tumors were cute, we'd be fucked. Like, no, just leave it. If tumors manifested as enhanced sexual characteristics, our species would be fucked.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can tell if somebody got cancer because they get thin and attractive.
Yeah, their dick grows 5 sizes.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. I really like the analogy of the bug. And, like, there's just something to be said of how physical it actually is in the world, or if it's just meant to be like this metaphor for the sickness.
Well, and also, I think another thing that's going on there that I wonder about is, in the same way that, yeah, there's a version of British David who's smart in his head, like, is there, you know, that thing in dreams where, you know, you are everybody? Mm-hmm. Like, is there now a version of the Shadow King who is David, who is 100% separate from the Shadow King, who's just David manifesting as the Shadow King?
Yeah.
Or as Lenny?
Well, especially with how long he was a part of his life, right? Like, there's parts of your personality that once, like, even once they're gone, or once you've moved on past that part in your life, they still kind of show up in bits and pieces of you. So, old ideas and whatnot. And this is definitely more than just an old idea. Yeah, this was a cool scene. I like their interactions. I really like Clark.
I really like Clark. I forgot that I really like Clark. I forgot that in the last season they gave us that really big long story of like what his home life is like, and like one of those, he got fucked. Like when he's sitting here with David and we're supposed to, here's a problem I'm having.
Okay.
Like, I'm kind of more sympathetic. They're doing a bad job of keeping me on David's side right now.
Yeah.
Having, like, in this episode, he lies to Sid, and he kind of bullies Clark, who has been psychologically and physically tortured, not by David, but connected to David's actions. Like, it makes David seem like a bully.
Yeah, it's tough to like him throughout this episode. Yeah, this scene is pretty phenomenal.
Real quick, for anybody who's listening to this who has seen or who has read it, this reminds me a lot of the comic book The Filth. There's a sequence in The Filth where a character has to go talk to the people in charge, and it's done with all this weird photo negative red-green background stuff, and it reminds me so much of this scene. I'll show you those pages.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. That's I wondered what you thought about the significance of the placement behind him, about the iron grating and that hallway into the darkness. It does look like it's perspectively down, right?
I'm so distracted by everything else. Like,
well, that's why.
It's wonderful weirdness for the sake. And like, they're all the images in this are, it's not concentric circles, but it's like it's perspective and things growing towards a center. Like the trees are doing it. There's a tunnel in one of the other ones. I mean, what the fuck? Like, what we're talking about the fucking bat. Like, what's the deal with the kid with the cyborg brain with the basket on his head who's talking through mustachioed beautiful
women? What's the point? And it doesn't need to have a point. It can be artistically beautiful, but that's exactly it, right? Is that even the boats and the idea of this placement.
It does need to be like, it hits a point where if you can't just throw weirdness in for weird, like, at risk of being too critical of something which is beloved by many people, like, then you just wind up with something like Lost or Twin Peaks. Like, I don't believe that's what this show is. From what they've shown us in the first season, I believe this is a show with answers. That said, I don't know if this show is a love story. I don't know if I believe that, like, him and Sid are going to get through this okay. And at its core, I feel like this is going to be a Breaking Bad type journey where you're never really going to know until the show ends whether or not David is the protagonist or the antagonist.
Yeah.
If all these people are here to help him, or if like, oh man, if somebody just fucking shot him right now, every one of these characters would be better off.
Yeah. Right? Because then there's nowhere for that to return to. That power is not there.
And that he himself isn't even in control of himself. I just hate it when he lies to people.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to not, but I feel like they have to in order to give it a certain amount of ambiguity. And even with Sid, there's some of her interactions earlier on in the first season that I couldn't tell if it was me being judgmental of the acting or if it was intentionally distanced or intentionally meant to make me feel not convinced of feelings about intent, right? And I feel like there's a little bit of that in the interaction in the sphere, right? Where you have Sid from the future, and she, we assume, is looking out for David, but at the same time, the theme of the episode was meant to teach Sid that she might end up like Melanie, embittered and sad, and maybe her motivations change by then. So even though she might love David present, current David in her world might be a monster, might have also made her a miserable human being, and actually seem like what you said, these people might have been better off if David was never there. So you can love a person and still not necessarily want to work for their betterment, and like that makes me wonder about her motivations in the future now. And then one of the things, I've seen this kind of thing happen with tropes before, David being portrayed as either a protagonist or antagonist here, and keeping us guessing about that. They have to kind of leave you feeling like there's a bad taste in your mouth so that you don't know what else David knows or what else he's hiding and what he's being honest about, right?
I mean, I still don't know from the first season.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of shit where, like, it's interesting to have a show where I can be this uncertain about what is real and still enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Because I do.
Yeah, it's great. I don't really want them, when I'm going through a series, I don't want to guess the ending. I like the way that they're setting it up. I like that they're doling out little bits of information. And even in the first episode, they're about to go into the dance scene, which tickles my heart. Oh, it's so good.
This is another one of those things too where it's like in theory, I'm sure, you know, you can tell by the production that they are spending a lot of money on it, but like all you need to do this scene is people who can dance.
Yeah.
You could do this for so cheap, and it's one of the best manifestations of psychic powers I've ever seen. Like, this is one of those, like, yeah, this is what you would do.
Dance
if
fight.
You were psychic.
I am from a musical theater background, and if there are more dance fights in anything, I am so happy.
It's funny. It gives me a real Scott Pilgrim vibe.
Yeah, but like, and I'm just like, when you're a jet, you know, like this is in the back of your head, you know, that they're dancing out their aggressions, and then it switches to Carrie doing like badass. He's slick fucking dancer, by the way.
He's a professional clown.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That actor, like, if you wiki him, it's one of those like I don't know if I know him from anything, but he's one of those, like, I think that dude's been on stage doing physical comedy and dance stuff.
He's got some control of his limbs real good.
Yeah.
Very good dancer. Yeah.
I feel like all of these people are very, like, what's his name there? Jermaine Clements. Like, he's a performer.
Yes, yeah. Well, and like, I'm just saying, his dancing was probably one of the better of them, but like, Aubrey Plaza can just have anything she wants of mine, because that dance was just, she's so perfect, and the way that everybody moved and stopped it's just, I love that sort of thing. It's very, what do they call that? Frug. What am I trying to say? I'm terrible at remembering actual names. So there's this dance style where you frug.
Is it the monk? Is it the frug? I know
no,
the frug.
That's a frug, but there's a certain
Vogue.
No,
the monkey.
No, we're
the
just
mashed potatoes.
Yes, it's the mashed potatoes.
And do the twist.
And then sometimes they
the
give
hokey
you
pokey.
waffles. Anyway. Yeah, this is the scene where there's a lot of lying. This is the part where it was really, really hard.
I don't like that at all. Like, it's yeah. I don't like my protagonist being a shitty person. And I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, I hear it even as it comes out of my mouth of like, yeah, you're one, not supposed to, and like two, that's what makes a human being a realistic person, is being a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
But I do. Yeah, I don't want to get caught into this too much. I don't know. It makes me wonder sometimes how much, like, David's even the main character of this show. Like, despite it being called Legion, it's weird how much he is just... Everyone else is really interesting as well. I'm never disappointed to spend time with someone else in this show.
That's the way, again, that it should be. Because if we spent all of our time with David... we would lose all these fascinating characters, right? They all have their personal dramas to go through and their exploration, and that adds so much more depth, because David's process is gonna be fucked up and weird, and like, you can't spend your whole experience in that. You have to have other people's perspective on it also, right? Which adds so much in the way that they're all dealing with it differently, you know?
This is cute. He makes a little compass that's attuned to him.
So how did he do that so fast?
He asked Carrie to make it while he was in the tank.
How long was he in the tank?
Time is...
Well, that's exactly it, right? Is that I'm just like, oh, you just meant... That's the kind of shit that makes me feel a little suspicious of him, right? It's just like, is that a lie? Did you already have this for another purpose? Did you get it from future? Like, and maybe there was all these interactions that we're going to find out about between him and future Sid in that year that would explain why he might have that, and there's a paradoxical thing where he has to lie about it in order to in present Sid, right? So
I wouldn't be surprised if like it's one of those, yeah, I don't think that's what's going on, but as you say it, it's like
but maybe I don't know, like, there's reasons to lie, right, that aren't necessarily meant to harm the person. It's meant for protection's sake, right? So I wonder if that's some of the motivation too, and it makes me feel less bad about David, that maybe he knows something else that is meant to protect her.
Yeah. No, I think that's got to be the case, cuz yeah, we're up to the scene now where he's inside the ball and Sid from the future starts talking to him in silence. So there is... Yeah, like if my complaint is it's such a shitty thing that he lied to her, if he lied to her because she told him to lie to her, it gets into a like, yeah, you... Yeah.
Yeah, right? And this is beautiful.
Thing.
I love the way they present this, the communication in symbols.
It's such a funny play on what they did last season in the classroom scene, and just in general, we're like this isn't an adaptation of a comic. Like there's no story. There's a story somewhere in X-Men chronology that involves Legion and the Shadow King, but like all these characters, all this shit is all an original creation, but they still manage to involve all these visual design components that make it feel like a comic book.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, more so than like, this is one of those things like Scott Pilgrim, like this gets it. This gets the medium. This gets what you can do when you jump forms.
Oh shit. I'm sorry. I thought I turned the sound off on there. I am so sorry. I'm trying to leave it off. That is so weird.
I've seen other parts, and in order to keep the timeline, I'll just interject some music in there for a bit, and now we'll come back.
Yeah.
We'll come back from that weird little break of silence that we had to take.
Sorry about that.
That was goblins at the window and shit like that. Whatever.
Goblin slayed, as we were.
Yes. Anyways, the drawn stuff looking cool. Everybody's so nice. I don't trust any of them.
No, and I like that.
Oh yeah, like is that the compass she's wearing on her neck right there?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, so it just made
people from the future.
And like paradoxes are weird. You just never know what you could be fucking with and how much he knows. Okay, so then also this is the part where we see the actual little bug. Like just after this part here, the little slimy bug shows up in the real world a little bit, and I wondered. Oh no, I guess it wasn't. I guess they were in the white room when you see the bug.
Who's that monk?
Oh yeah. So what's with that guy?
I mean, see now there's multiple legions going on. There's all the people inside David's head who are all David, and I think potentially there's everyone. The difference. Legion and Shadow King are both beings who hold multiple beings. With David, they're all himself. With the Shadow King, they're all the people he's stolen. But they're both single entities representing armies. That's my take.
Oh, jeez.
So that now we're going to be in this weird place where, yeah, when we meet a new person, are they David? Are they a real person? Are they David's personality manifested? Or are they the Shadow King's past people manifested? Yeah. That's just a guess. That's a wild guess.
And when
he's being all creepy and weird.
When they say Farouk, right? That's like a previous manifestation, right?
No, that's the real dude.
Okay.
That's the physical guy who became the Shadow King.
Okay. So then he was the one that, because I did a little research on this. He existed in like Egypt or something like that, and he was a builder, I think. If I remember like that, he was just he got a lot of like power and influence, and then I remember what I read. It was just that when Xavier met him, it was like in Egypt, and he was running like a small crime syndicate of pickpocketers, and Farouk tried to get him to join him in that process, and then they ended up fighting on the astral plane. Yeah. So that's what I remember about that,
and I believe in the comic as in the show. Yeah, when they have their psychic battle, Professor X basically like punches him so hard that his astral form is knocked out of his body. That's not really what happens.
Astral Hadouken.
And so and that gets part into like why he's just a bodiless psychic entity moving around the earth fucking with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, the first episode of the first season was very confusing. So I was cool with knowing this one would be very confusing. And like I'm sure they're just going to like halfway through the season start dumping information on us.
Yeah, it'll start to fall into place. And like I just want to be curious right now. This sickness thing is fascinating to me, like a psychological sickness that could pass out from a mutant, intentional or unintentional, right? Like, is the pollution of Oliver's abilities and Farouk's abilities causing it, or is it an intentional thing that Farouk is trying to spread this sickness?
Well, I feel like I think they mentioned something like the first time it manifested was when they got the closest to catching him, and that's when they got distracted with it. So I think he's doing it intentionally. And I think it's I don't know. There's a whole little monologue at the start of it where a narrator says something about madness and mazes and thinking a thought over and over again, and
delusions.
The way that was presented, like, that was right after the cold open of the start of the season. So it makes me think that that little speech is the idea of madness being a maze that you have to move through in your own mind. I think that might be the theme of this season and the show in general, but like specifically this season. And I sort of, I don't know, I'm imagining those people are, yeah, like what if you were psychically put into a maze in your head where you're just running this loop over and over again until you get out, and that's what's happening to those people. I don't know. I'm trying to draw too much with too little evidence.
Well, they're probably just trying to give you a metaphor for what's happening to them. They're stuck on this delusion, whatever that delusion was. That's why you hear on those messages that are being played this repetitive thought or thoughts that don't seem like your own, right? These are legs that don't belong to you. That's a thought that doesn't, it's a very, very strange delusion. So they're being aware of it. May I mention that I also thought that when they were first playing that very Big Brother, very like 1984 warning type messages that I'm just like, these seem to me, before I knew the context, mandates. Things that suppress original thought or creative thought, right? Because if you are in a world where creative thought leads to delusional thoughts or leads to a weird, in this case, to a sickness, but it very easily could be construed as something that is meant to conform people. And that is an interesting dynamic in such a creative and weird, crazy atmosphere to have played over top, like pay attention for weird thoughts and stuff like that, because it is actually a warning, but it is also really, really creepy. It's creepy in the sense that it leads to madness, or creepy in the sense that someone is trying to control your thoughts or to be aware of weird thoughts in that way.
Yeah, the amount of paranoia you would feel as soon as psychics were proven real, I can't even fucking imagine. Like, that would, if I knew conclusively in laboratories they had, like, full fucking evidence of people who could read other people's minds, like, how would the rest of us not just go fucking crazy?
How do we talk to each other or how do you talk to someone who can read your mind, right?
Honestly.
But even
right,
then,
well.
yeah.
Well, that's a lot of talking about that episode. Did you have another point? Even
no, I really liked it, and it was beautiful, and I want to watch it again.
I meant to say, like, it was we were talking about Legion, Chapter 9. That's a pretty easy chapter title. It was directed by Tim. Do you want to help me out with that? Tim Malantes? Tim Malantes. That was... I feel bad. Holy shit. According to what I'm reading on Wikipedia here, all these episodes are being written by the same two people. Noah Hawley and Nathaniel Halpern are writing every fucking episode, which
That's
is
cool.
Archer. Every episode of Archer is written by one person.
Huh.
Which is why that show has that voice.
That's neat for a writer, I think. Because you get to, like, actually fully
like, it's your
portray,
fucking thing.
It's your baby.
Like, yeah.
Well, and that's also kind of comic booky, right?
Yeah.
That's very, like, them working together throughout the whole thing.
It's pretty fucking intense, though. Like, that's like, this show must take over these guys' fucking life while it's going on.
That's
but
beautiful.
I mean, it should. It's a good show. It's well made.
They get to make the thing that they love. That's so cool. The way, and it's just so psychedelic. I love it.
All right. Well, thanks for being here with me, Alicia.
Thanks,
And
Hank.
I'll have you back here next week so we can talk about Chapter 10,
Oh, yeah.
which is directed by a woman, which I'm glad, because I'm trying to pay more attention to how many shows actually have women directors on them, because it's not as many as there should be.
Especially when they're really awesome fucking shows.
Yeah. All right. Well, say goodnight, Alicia.
Good night, Alicia.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. This has been a Death by Media Man production. You can subscribe to the Death by Media Man podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. If you enjoyed this, please leave us a like or a comment and tell a friend. And if you'd like to support the Death by Media Man channel with your money, there's a link to our Patreon in the description of this program. Thanks so much for listening.